I once heard the story of an engineer who programmed his word processor to insert a comma after every third word because he didn't want to bother learning how to use them appropriately. While we may have to give him kudos for his software engineering skills, we can also acknowledge that that's not really the way to handle commas, at least not if you want people to respect you. I'll concede that commas have a reputation for being difficult and fiddly, but I'd argue that they don't deserve that reputation. Commas follow regular and predictable rules, and it really isn't that hard to learn how to use them well. In fact, all you need is a basic understanding of how sentences get put together. We'll review some of those basics here, but if you want a more thorough discussion of English grammar, check out our grammar series. The link is in the description. Now, like other punctuation marks, commas are connectors. They work to link the pieces in sentences with multiple moving parts. We've already talked about colons and semicolons, which work to link multiple independent clauses together. But as you might observe, commas are smaller and weaker. They aren't capable of linking independent clauses by themselves. So if you want to link two independent clauses with a comma, you'll need to include a coordinating conjunction as well. If you have the coordinator without a comma, you have a run-on sentence. If you have a comma without a coordinator, you have a comma splice. So just remember that you need both if you're trying to hold two independent clauses together. Of course, commas are also famous for sticking lists together. Bearing in mind that commas are weak, those are usually lists of words or phrases. And you might know that there are some people desperately in need of a rewarding hobby who have a strong opinion about the last comma in a list. There are those who maintain that the last comma is unnecessary because there's already an and there. And that's fair, but the absence of a comma creates opportunities for ambiguity and confusion. Take, for instance, this sentence. Now, tell me, how many umbrella options are there, and what are they? There's definitely a red one, and a green and white one, and a yellow one. But is there a purple and blue one? A purple and orange one? A purple, blue, and orange one? The addition of a comma, however unnecessary someone might say it is, eliminates the possibility of confusion. So if you can put a comma and avoid the risk of confusion, why not do it? Next, commas are useful for connecting all kinds of extra stuff to your sentences, whether they're subordinate clauses, words, or phrases that don't fit in the regular structure of your sentence. For example, here's a simple one-clause sentence. You don't need any commas here because we're following a regular old subject-verb structure. Easy peasy. Now, perhaps you want to add some extra information about the apple. See how this short phrase interrupts the structure of the sentence? It's extra stuff, so it gets glued in with commas. You could also add some modifying info at the end. And note that we're talking about how to use commas, not how to come up with good similes. Or you might add information to the beginning of the sentence. Again, you have a phrase that isn't an integral part of the main clause, so commas can do the linking work. Some people will argue that commas aren't necessary when introductory phrases are fairly short. However, I would just respond by saying that I have never been confused by a sentence with a comma after an introductory phrase, and I am regularly confused by sentences that omit them. So if you're going to play the dangerous game of omitting commas, make sure your ambiguity radar is set to maximum so that you don't accidentally create confusion. Or keep things simple for yourself and others, and just make sure that you include a comma after any introductory word, phrase, or clause. Finally, when it comes to subordinate clauses, there may be some room for confusion, so let's just clear that up now. Commas work as connectors, and subordinating conjunctions can work as connectors too. Because of that, you don't need a comma when the subordinate clause comes after the main clause in a sentence. If the subordinate clause comes anywhere else, though, you're going to need a comma or two to glue it in, as you can see in these examples. So see, easy peasy once again. Commas are a useful and versatile way to link all kinds of things to your sentences. To summarize, by themselves they aren't strong enough to link independent clauses together, but they can do the job if you pair them with a coordinating conjunction. You can use commas to link things in lists. You can use commas to attach modifiers to your sentences, whether they show up at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. And you can use them to stitch dependent clauses to the beginning or middle of a sentence. You might think of these as all the structural ways to use commas. That is, these commas all show readers how your sentences are put together grammatically, something that can do a lot to help them to understand what you mean to say. And admittedly, there's a lot more here than there was for colons or semicolons, so it's fair to be a little overwhelmed at first, but it's really not that bad. Just 5 general things to keep in mind. Of course, there are also some other conventional uses for commas, but we'll get into that next time.